Picture this. A man, barefoot and wearing a torn robe, is being pulled through the cold, cobbled streets of Constance. The air is thick with smoke. Up ahead, a wooden stake, flames already licking at the base like they're hungry. But the man? He's not trembling. He's not crying out. He's calm. This is Jan Hus. He was a scholar. A man who in 1415 stood up to the most powerful force in Europe, the Roman Catholic Church, and didn't back down. What followed wasn't just a trial, it was an execution, dressed up to look like justice. Or was it? Let's explore the story of a man who had the courage to speak the truth to those in power and ended up giving his life for it. So hit that subscribe button and let's get started. Jan Hus was born in 1372 in a small Bohemian village called Husinek. Let's explore the story of a man who had the courage to speak the truth to those in power and ended up giving his life for it. That's going to matter later in a way you won't forget. He came from nothing, son of a peasant, but his mind sharp, like razor sharp. He studied theology and philosophy at Charles University in Prague, eventually becoming a respected teacher and even the head of the university. But fame and titles, they didn't matter to him. That wasn't what drove him. Jan Hus was obsessed with one thing: truth. And in the early 1400s, the truth about the church, it was ugly. The Catholic Church was drowning in corruption. Simony, bishops literally selling spiritual favors, indulgences, people paying to skip the punishment for sins, and behind the curtain, political backstabbing, even assassinations, masked as religious decrees. It wasn't just rotten, it was blatant. And no one was doing anything about it, except Hus. From the pulpit of the Bethlehem Chapel in Prague, he started preaching in Czech, the people's language, not Latin, so everybody could understand. And what he said was fire. He called out bishops for selling salvation. He slammed the Pope for fueling war. And he declared publicly that no one, not even the Pope, was above the law of Christ. Bold, absolutely. Dangerous? You have no idea. This guy was poking a very big, very powerful bear. And that bear was the church. But his words, they spread like wildfire. The people of Bohemia, nobles, students, scholars, they were hungry for reform, and they rallied around him. He wasn't alone in his thinking. He was inspired by John Wycliffe, an English reformer who said the church had no business hoarding wealth and power. Wycliffe even translated the Bible into everyday language. But here's the difference. Wycliffe died peacefully. Hus would not get that luxury. By 1410, the church excommunicated him twice. They even burned his writings in the town square. Hus didn't budge. Prague, it turned into a powder keg. His supporters and church loyalists clashed. Tensions exploded. In 1412, 3 young men were executed in the streets for protesting indulgences. They became martyrs, and Hus's voice only got louder. The church was losing its grip, and they knew it. Then came the letter. In 1414, from Germany, Sigismund, king of the Romans, soon to be Holy Roman Emperor, invited Hus to the Council of Constance. It was supposed to be a huge summit to fix the chaos in the church, especially since 3 rival popes were fighting for power at the time. Hus was told he could come, speak his truth, defend his teachings, and Sigismund promised safe conduct, a guarantee that Hus could travel, speak, and leave without harm. Sounds promising, right? Yeah, no. Hus's friends begged him, don't go. It's a trap, they warned. But Hus, he believed in justice more than he feared death. So he went. Big mistake. The second he set foot in Constance, the trap snapped shut. No sermons, no debates, no fair trial. They arrested him, shackled him, and threw him into a damp, disease-ridden dungeon. So much for safe conduct. Sigismund, silent. For 7 months, Hus suffered. He was interrogated, starved, treated like a criminal. But they didn't want truth. They wanted submission. They hit him with 30 charges, most of them outrageous, like claiming he called himself the fourth person of the Trinity. Yeah, that ridiculous. When they demanded he recant, Hus said, "Show me my errors with scripture and reason and I'll retract. Otherwise, I'm not backing down." Their answer? Not reason, just fire. July 6th, 1415. They dragged Hus into the Grand Cathedral in Constance. A bishop placed a tall paper crown on his head, painted with devils, labeled arch-heretic. Hus looked them in the eye and said, "Even if you piled 100 devils on me, I'd still cling to the truth." They marched him to the stake. As the executioners bound him and the firewood crackled beneath his feet, Hus took a breath and said his final words, "You may burn this goose, but in 100 years a swan will rise and you won't silence him." Then the flames roared, the smoke rose, and Jan Hus burned. He never screamed. The church thought they'd won. But they were dead wrong. His death sparked a fire. Back in Bohemia, his followers, the Hussites, refused to kneel. They rose up. The Hussite wars broke out. And despite everything, the Catholic armies couldn't crush them. And then, 102 years later, in 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther walked up to a church door in Wittenberg and nailed his 95 theses to it. The Reformation had begun. And Hus's prophecy? It came true. Luther himself said, "We are all Hussites, whether we know it or not." The goose had burned, but the swan? It soared. Jan Hus wasn't a rebel for rebellion's sake. He wasn't an enemy of faith. He loved the church, and that's why he couldn't stand to see it corrupted. He died, shackled, condemned, but with dignity. And for truth and history, it doesn't remember the names of the men who sentenced him. It remembers his. Jan Hus proved that no fire, no power can extinguish a soul burning with conviction. So I'll leave you with this. What do you think? Could you stand up to an empire like Hus did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it to keep Hus's legacy alive. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.